My name is Otsuka Ryunosuke Masatomo. I was born as Markus Lösch in Germany, and I'm the 7th generation soke of the Hokushin Itto-ryu Hyoho.
Great. That's definitely a surprising journey for a lot of people to so I'm excited to hear that story. So why don't you talk about before you got into Budo? Like, what were your interests as a child? What were you thinking of doing? And then how did you discover this so different culture and art?
I started shooting the English longbow when I was a child, first with lighter draw weights, and then my strongest bow was 140 pounds of draw weight. So like the Mary Rose bows, the traditional English archery was what I was doing as a child and during my teenage years. When I was 11, I read the book Shogun from James Clavell, an old classic, maybe most likely, I think everybody knows that book or movie. And and since then my passion and interest into Japanese culture started. And with that, when I was 15, I had an injury in the holding shoulder of the bow, where you hold the bow, because of the heavy draw weights on the not yet full grown bones. And through that, I had to stop with archery. So I was thinking, well, what else am I interested in? And I wanted to pick up the Japanese sword. So I searched for Kendo and Iaido classes, because that's all I knew back then, and started with Kendo and Iaido here in Munich.
So how big of a part of your life was that during that time, even doing the bow and then finding out these other Japanese arts? Were you just a typical kid that had a lot of interest, like you were playing on the computer, you were playing board games, you were playing with friends, and this was just something else? Or how much time did you actually spend in your martial arts?
In archery, actually a lot, because you have to become able to shoot these bows. You have to shoot at least 100 arrows a day to train yourself naturally, like without fitness studio or other stuff. So just to gain the muscle to be able to shoot those bows. So I did a lot, but I was a child, so of course I played with friends and also computer games, like every other child, I would say.
But like 100 hours a day, like I can barely get my daughter to play violin, like play 4 chords for like 10 times. Were you naturally disciplined, or did your parents kind of enforce this kind of that structure on you?
They didn't. I wouldn't call it naturally disciplined either. I just had a super interest in it, and when I have an interest into something, I get really passionate about things, and then I just do it as much as I can.
Cool. So you had to stop archery because of that injury, and then you started out with the sword arts. Could you talk about the beginning of that? How did you find your dojo, and what was that the first few days and a few weeks and months like?
The dojo was a normal Iaido dojo, and I trained Kendo with a Japanese person in my city. And I didn't join an official club for Kendo. For Iaido, I did Musoshin Ryu myself. And Sete and Musoshin Ryu. So that was over the internet. I found it over the internet. But I trained it for about 3 years, and then I finished school, graduated from school, and then I was like, well, what to do with my life now? And I really had this passion for the sword, like I had for archery. So I wanted to learn more, study more. But I was kind of unsatisfied with what Kendo and Iaido were like, especially when it comes to like fighting others. I was a lot into fighting, and I was asking always questions like, well, what does your opponent do? And I was always told like, well, you don't think so much about the opponent, think about yourself, your own ego. And this is the kind of things which I was taught. And through that, I was not satisfied, and I searched and I found out about koryu, about the old schools, and I said, well, why not go to Japan and train koryu bujutsu? And
Okay, then you were just like, what? This was a constant search online, and then you said, "Hey, there's this guy," and then you flew there and decided to find. Like, what was the whole story behind even being connected with a dojo and then having?
You mean in Japan? How I found the dojo in Japan, or?
Yeah, just the whole instance of getting into koryu.
For the beginning, I flew with a Japanese friend of mine. I flew to Kyoto, so Munich, Tokyo, Osaka, and then to Kyoto. And in Kyoto, I was for about 3 months living closely to Nijojo, so to the castle in Kyoto. A small apartment. Well, apartment, it was 7 square meters. It was a whole more than an apartment. But but the problem was with Kyoto, there were not many koryu present. So first I trained in a school in Osaka, but was not really satisfied with the training. Rented up an apartment in Tokyo, and I moved to Tokyo.
But so normally when people go to Japan for training, they also go there for other reasons. Like they might be teaching English to Japanese people. They might be going to school there. What was your main like other besides the training? Were you able to spend your time or earn a living?
I was so lucky that my late grandfather left me some money after he passed away, and I decided to use the money I inherited for to spend it for training.
Okay. So what were your days like? Like talk about maybe a 1 week. What would you do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Depends on which time. In the beginning, I was studying about Japanese culture. I was traveling a lot through the country, going to historical sites, battlefields, researching. And I didn't speak Japanese back then, so it was for me, also to develop my language skills, because the Japanese I speak is I studied by myself, so I never went to a school or something to become fluent in Japanese. It just happened through years of practice and studying by myself.
Oh wow!
And so when I was in Tokyo, I wanted to continue training, and I searched, because I was not satisfied with the school I trained in Osaka. And so for me, it was more like, when I want to join another school, or at least apply to another school, to become a student, I wanted to be 100% sure that this is the thing I want to train. And so for me, it was, as I told you earlier, important that you can fight with that. So I searched which schools were historically involved in a lot of fighting. So I found out about the Sandai Ryuha. I found out about also Hokushin Itto-ryu, Shintomunen Ryu, and Kyoshin Mechi Ryu, and also about the 4th biggest school, Shingyoto Ryu, and 5th biggest Chikishinkage Ryu. So of the late Edo period, because I was thinking, well, to find a strong school, don't only think about one period of time, but think about the period of time where all schools, which are nowadays considered koryu, existed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I was thinking. So because every school, be it a school which was like Nenryu, founded 14 something, or even other schools like Ogasawara Ryu, which were founded way earlier in the Kamakura period, they all existed also during the late Edo period. So when you search for a strong school, search for a school which was still strong in the late Edo period. And so I researched a lot and found out about those schools, made a list. I had about 10 schools, 6 up to 10 schools on my list, with the contact details. And the first one which was on my list was Hokushin Itto-ryu. So I scheduled a trial session, and then, well, went there. And this is how I became a student. And
so I can imagine that when you're looking at these schools that have a history of being used in actual combat, like that's what you were looking for. But nowadays, when you go to a dojo, it might be slightly different. Like they kind of modernize things. What did you see when you first went there that met your expectations, and what were kind of surprises for you?
The first time it was just Kingaku, so just watching, observing the training, and it was very, very nice. It was the mixture I liked, because they on that day they did the kumitachi, the normal kenjutsu kumitachi. They did a bit of battle jutsu, and they did gekiken as well, so sparring session. And to see that was like the combination of everything. That was where I was really like, oh, I want to go there. And Sendai was leading the training, so my adoptive father, back then not my adoptive father, but he was leading the training. And at that time, he asked me, yeah, well, do you want to hold an naginata? And I was like, why not? And then he gave me a naginata and let me swing it a bit. And then he just said to me, yeah, expect you to be like, do you come tomorrow? And would be expecting you to come tomorrow, and said yes. And then, yeah, he was so kind to pick me up actually, with a car. And since then, I was joining the training. It was super uncomplicated. I think many people nowadays they think that joining a koryu is such a hard thing, you know, those stories where people have to sit in front of the door of the master for days to be accepted. But actually, my impression, the impression I got from many schools in Japan is they're just so happy if people show up. So it's not that difficult to join a school. They are happy if you come. Of course, there might be people who are I don't want to teach foreigners or something like that. But do you want to study under a person like that? Me not. So that's, yeah. So normally koryu are quite open, in my opinion. So what I experienced.
Yeah. What did you say in your introductory email? I imagine you had to introduce yourself. You had to say you wanted to join. Was it just as simple as, hey, can I check it out? Or did you write more about like your interests and all that?
I was just asking if I can come and for Kingaku, because they wrote on the website back then that you can come for Kingaku on this and this and this day. And I sent an email and asked them.
And that's it. And then he decided to drive at you and pick you up.
No. That was how I reached out. Okay. Then I went there by train and bus, and then it was like I observed the training, and then after training, he said to me, "Yeah, well, if I want to continue, I should be there tomorrow." And then he drove me back. Me and my ex-wife back home, and then he said, well, I pick you up here tomorrow at like 5, something about that, and then we can go to Keiko together. And I was like, okay. That's pretty rare, you know, getting picked up by a car and having a person like by the teacher driven with the car to the place for training. It was pretty rare, and I liked it. And I like the openness, you know. He asked a lot of questions about about Germany, about the things I did before, about my archery background. Yeah, and he's a very, very open person, and through that, I think we got a nice connection from the beginning. And over the years, it developed into like a father-son relationship. And yeah, until he adopted me as his adopted son. That's why I have the Japanese name.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about that. Like when you have a sensei, like gradually both people have to get to know each other. You kind of build up your respect, and then you start helping each other out. Could you talk about some of these levels? Like, did you start out just as a student, and then you noticed that okay, he needed help organizing things, or to make some certain decisions, and you would give him some advice, or like how did that relationship grow over time to eventually having him adopt you?
That was actually just through training in the beginning. I just went to training and I asked, when are more hours, and are there any more hours? And he was like, oh, do you have so much time? I was like, yeah, I basically came to Japan to just study koryu. So he was like, okay, I can make extra time, because he was retired already from his job. He was a consultant for hospitals. And through that, he said, well, we can train more if you want to. And okay, if that is possible, yes, would be very nice. And we started to train more and more and more, like in private, and then also on the open days. And yeah, through that, this whole relationship developed actually. But the first really hard experience, which almost got me to quit actually, was my first Shiai Geiko, the first dueling training I had. It was an experience which of another kind, like, you know, it was the first time I put on a bogu, one of the first, in the first few weeks of my training actually. And he said, yeah, put it on and you spar with me. I was like, okay, that's unexpected, let's say like that, to spar with a teacher in the beginning. But he was very open about that. And then I was like, I wanted to prove myself, you know. I was 18 years old, so young, hot-headed guy who just wanted to prove himself. And through that, yeah, he was in Seigan, I was as well, and so I attacked just straight onwards and wanted to land a hit and like impress him basically. And he did a Nuki Ashiwazaki technique, so where you go down and to the side and cut the leg. And my shin cracked open, the skin on the shin cracked open, and I flew over because with my drive going forward and the hit on the leg, I just fell on my face. And the shin cracked open, and it bled so much because on the shin the skin is very thin, right? So it bled a lot. But I was super upset, like with myself actually, but also, oh, it's just shinai, it's not a real sword kind of thing. I was not the best student, to be honest, in the beginning. But this is actually what happens with most people when they get beaten for the first time, really beaten up. I was like sitting there and like taping my leg, and he came to me and asked like, oh, you look a bit upset. I was like, yeah, my Japanese was not that good at that day. I just said like this, and he was like, yeah, but you know, you should not be upset because it's just keiko. I was like, yeah, but it's just a shinai. I know it now. Of course, this is a rude thing to say to your teacher, but I was really like, you know, in my ego was hurt a lot, let's say like that, through that loss. And because I thought I could do better, and falling on your face, having the shin cracked open is not a nice way to get defeated in the beginning. Yeah. And well, he said, well, yes, of course it's a shinai, but if I can, shinai is nothing other than grass. Bamboo is a kind of grass, and if I can defeat you with a piece of grass, then how can you think of winning with a shinken? And that actually made some sense to me.
Yeah.
And I apologized, and yeah, but he was not angry at all. He was not angry about that. He was just so understanding, and he told me, well, everybody gets like that in the beginning when you get beaten, because getting beaten is the first step of like forging your ego, because everybody has those expectations. Let's say most of the people, most people who come, I see it nowadays with the new students all the time. With the first time they get into Shiai Geiko, they all want to prove themselves. They all want to show what they are made of, what they can do, and yeah.
Yeah. No, if a student is lucky, then they'll have that experience early in their
Yes.
journey. Yeah.
Yes, I would say so. Because if you don't go through that, how can you study to lose? You have to study losing in order to go to study winning, how to win. Because if you don't know what can happen to you, you might attack rashly, you might get about Hyoho, about the strategy you studied, about all the waza you studied. You have to really get beaten a lot in the beginning. So there's a saying in Hokushin Itto-ryu by Chiba Shusaku sensei. He wrote it in the Kenpo Hiketsu. Hokushin Itto-ryu is studied through getting beaten.
That's
so
cool.
This is one of the sayings actually of our school's founder. So it really showed me that this is like still like the old stuff, and so I continued despite the leg being very painful, especially in Seiza after that, because, well, cracked chin and not the bone but the skin, and sitting in Seiza and moving around in Suwariwaza, Batojutsu techniques, it was kind of uncomfortable, but, well, you move through the pain and get stronger. That's how you are forged.
So at this time you were already training with your sensei like extra hours. What does that even, what does that mean? It's like every day for a few hours and then you would just...
Yes. At that time I started to train with him a bit more regularly on other days, and then in the end it was like 7 days a week, like just each day, like 5-7 hours training, sometimes even up to 10 hours. The physical training was at least about 5 hours each day. And then there came strategy, like the whole strategy, Tetsugaku, Reiho. We have a large Reiho curriculum. So we teach court etiquette. We teach how to like kitsuke for certain, how to dress in certain situations, how to behave in certain situations. For example, towards like, how to say, higher ranking bushi, lower ranking bushi, how you should behave according to your rank, and also that so that you can teach people of other ranks how to behave.
Well, there was one thing that I wanted to ask you was like, besides the fact that you're a foreigner, you're also getting this extra time with the senseis. What was your relationship like with other students in that school? And were there other seniors that were, I don't know, jealous or felt like, what was this person coming in and getting so much more time with the sensei?
The thing is that in the beginning, there were no much problems, but later on, when I got high up in the chain, because I trained a lot, I spent my whole time on training Kenjutsu. I was super focused and super dedicated to study more and more, and the relationship with the other students was good until I surpassed a couple of them by rank. Because in Hokushin Itto-ryu, there is no like, oh, you have to study for, let's say, 10 years to get this grading, or this kind of thing didn't exist back in the Edo period. So yeah, in our school it doesn't exist nowadays as well. So problem started when I received my Dai-Mokuroku Menkyo, the scroll before the Menkyo-Kaiden, so the 4 or 5th of 5 scrolls. And then it was that some of my former senpai, they became practically my kohai through that, and that made some trouble inside of the school. But yeah, back then I was also it was in 2013, and the thing was that my closest friend in the dojo, he was a Dai-Mokuroku, so a Shihandai of the school, and he was already that rank when I joined. So basically he showed me how to hold a sword properly, taught me a lot of stuff. And then imagine a young foreigner surpassing you. We were like, also for Sendai also always used us to when, for example, challengers came to the school, to fight them, because we were like, back then we were the best two fighters of the school. So we always used also to spar against each other, and take on the challengers who came to the dojo, or just new practitioners who wanted to just try it out, practitioners from other schools who wanted to go have a Shiai Geiko session, not like official Tari UGI, but sometimes people for official Tari UGI came, sometimes people came just to practice, and we were basically always taking those challengers on. And the thing is, after I received the Chumokuroku before him, many of the older teachers inside of the school, they didn't like that. And because Sendai was very close with me at that time, because we trained every day, I also often stayed at his place. I was at his uchideshi, so, and
was that officially like something he said to you, or said to the rest of the group? Yeah.
Yes. He called me his uchideshi, and through that, I think some were jealous, because, well, in the beginning, when I became his uchideshi, it was more like, for people, for most of them, they just could come to the regular practice because they had to work. But I had the luxury that I didn't have to work back then, so I just could practice and focus on practicing. And of course, come on, for a budoka, that's the dream, right? So for most people who are into training, and yeah, of course, I can imagine that people were jealous about that, but they didn't tell. It's the typical Japanese way. You don't say something. But after I received the Chumokuroku, there was opposition in the dojo against that. They were saying, well, they went to Sendai and told him, he's still like 20 and it's too young. He's a foreigner, but yeah, he speaks Japanese. I was a fluent speaker back then, so I managed to study quite quickly. So, but yeah, well, he's still a foreigner. That was basically what they said. And we had a gashu in Suwa in Nagano, and at that time they all gathered behind my friend and requested official shiai against me from Sendai. So they asked Sendai to have that we have an official bout against each other.
What does that even? What does that mean? Is that different than just like keiko?
Yeah, it's different. It's there is a kenbunyaku. So kenbunyaku is like modern kendo. It would be a shimpan basically. So it's a real, like, the result counts. Like shiai geiko is, as it said, shiai geiko. So it's keiko. It's just training. When you have shiai geiko sessions, it's not about winning or losing. It's about using your opponent as a chance to improve your skill. So you can practice techniques. So a good shiai geiko is that you are going to practice the techniques you're not so proficient in. so that you try out the kata, try out the strategies embedded inside of the kata, and use them, practice them frequently, so that you get more proficient in using them freely during a shiai, applying them to different situations. This is what you do during shiai geiko. So you get hit a lot during that in the beginning because you're not proficient doing that. And there are people who see shiai geiko as a thing of proving themselves, like I did in the beginning. Everybody does that actually in the beginning, but you get, with this attitude, you get to a certain point, but not further. So to get further, you have to really swallow your ego and get, like, really do the stuff. I'm not very good. I don't know if I can win with that. You just do that over and over again and try to use all the techniques you are not so good doing. Not the things you know you can win with, but the things you are not sure if you can win with. So to get that on the same level. This is what shiai geiko is for. But an official shiai is like a tameshiai. So tamesu to ao desu ne. Tamesu, testing, and ao, meeting. So a test meeting, if you would like to translate it. This is something different. And there is always a kenbunyaku, so a shimpan, who judges the shiai. And the result is official. So who wins and who loses. So it's kind of a big deal because, the person, like my former senpai, he didn't get the Chumokuroku before me, so they were saying, yeah, well, he deserves it as well, and yeah.
So they wanted him to beat you in that shiai so that he would
Yes.
get to your rank and not be lower anymore?
Yes, or that I get degraded or something like that. But degrading is not possible. Actually, it's, if you get graded, you're certified. Period. That's,
yeah.
But basically, well, they didn't like me because I got further ahead of them. So, and yeah, they wanted.
So what would the shiai prove? Is there like official rules somewhere that says if someone beats a person in one shiai, then it means something? Because like for us in Kendo in Iaido and all that, you do one shiai, you lose, win, whatever, you learn from it, and then there's another one, and there's another one. Like, what's the significance of them all backing this one guy and having you two fight?
With the official result, it was like, yeah, well, that I would not be the leading shihan of the school anymore. That was the goal of the thing. This was what we were fighting about.
Is that something, a rule in your school that happens? Like one shiai would determine?
Can be. Senda asked me if I want to accept this shiai, and I said yes. If they want it, we can do that. And we don't do this kind of shiai normally. That I have to say that this is not the norm. It in the Edo period, this kind of shiai, this kind of tameshiai, was used inside of schools to settle disputes. So you can imagine thousands of students, and there are disagreements, there are fights, and you have to settle them somehow. And in a fighting school, you settle them by fighting. So this is how it is done. And the thing was, in that shiai, it was supposed to be 2 rounds, one kenjutsu, one naginata jutsu. So, and I won both. But then he asked again, moikai onegaishimasu, and he wanted one more. So we fought a total of 9 rounds in total, and I won all of them. And afterwards, Sendai, as the Kenbunyaku, stepped in and said, "Moi, enough," and then it was settled, basically. But they were supposed to accept his decision, like that I'm the Saiko Shihan, like the leading Shihan of the school. But some did, some did not. And that led to a split inside of the school. Like in the end, a couple of students were expelled. About 20 students were expelled, and because Sendai did not really, want to continue teaching them. I offered to leave the school because I didn't want him to lose students. But the thing is that he said, if I let you go, what kind of teacher would that make me? And he said, you're going to stay. And then the others had to leave. So it was pretty hard for the school, because for koryu, 20 practitioners in Japan, long-time practitioners, is a lot of students when you lose them. And yeah.
So did that fix the situation? Like from then on, after that GI match, after the expelling, you then gradually progressed until you became soke?
Yes, it helped. It helped a lot to calm, to make peace inside of the school. Because Sendai was also like, if you have something against a foreigner being, just become able to do the same things he can do. That was what he was telling them. And if they didn't want to do so, they shall leave. That was what he said. Some stayed. One of the people who stayed is Emori Shihandai. He's now my right hand in Japan. He leads the school while I am not in Japan. And like some like him stayed, others left.
Yeah. So I'm sure anyone that's been in these schools for a long enough time, they would have experienced something similar to that. I think that one of the biggest surprises are who are the people that you used to think you could trust that turns out you can't, and then the people that you thought were insignificant, and oh wait, this person actually is someone that is dependable. Do you have situations like that, examples of that amongst the students?
I have that all the time, because in our school, talent and how do you say, when somebody is very dedication, talent, dedication are the things which bring you forward. You can, talent is not so much important, but of course, if you're a very talented person, you have a skill for swordsmanship. Or people, for example, I have one example, a student of mine, he did kendo for 14 years before he joined. So as modern kendo and Hokushin Itto-ryu have a lot of similarities, because of our school is like the ancestor of modern kendo, like when it comes to footwork and other stuff. He was really quick when it comes to going through the basics and mastering certain steps. So he became a kirigami, the first scroll, after 5 or 6 months. That's super quick. And then after 10 months in total, he was able to receive the Dai-Mokuroku, so the second scroll, and become a Shidoin, instructor of the school. He trained a lot. He trained basically 5 days a week. And he also took a lot of private lessons with me, and he was super into it. And I told him, yeah, well, if you want to, you can assist me with my own training, like so that I can go through the kata with someone during the hours where no official training is. And he helped me with that, and through that, he progressed really quickly. So yeah, became also then my personal sparring partner. So through that, you rise through the ranks more quickly than others. And there are some people who don't like that. Mm-hmm. But well, whose problem is that? That's the thing. It's not my problem. It's not his problem. It's their problem. It's the thing that they are. Some people are quitting because they are surpassed by people who were formerly below them. But that's an ego problem, in my opinion. So we don't have those restrictions. Oh, after 2 years you can get this ranking. After 4 years you can get this ranking, kind of thing. If you can do it, you can do it. If you show in the Shinsa that you're able to do the things which are required, then fine. Why should I not certify this? A certification is just a certification for the certain amount of skill and knowledge you have at that certain point. That's what grading is about, and or should be about. So it's not about years. It's not about, because if one trains, let's say once a week, or once in 2 weeks, or twice in 2 weeks, for 2 years, and if one trains 5 days a week, each single week, and trains at home as well, then who has more experience, even if it's in a shorter amount of time? The one who trains more. And so, yeah, that's the reason why we do our Shinsa only like what you can do, and not about how long you are a member.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in this situation now that you have people that are helping you, people below you that are also getting up in level, how are you thinking about, because also you're not in Japan, how are you thinking about overseeing the whole school and seeing who's responsible and who's able to do things, and what's kind of your, I don't know, management philosophy or yeah.
I have a very close relationship to all students. I know each of them by name, and we have now about 197 it was, I think, so almost 200 students, active students. Some of them are not that active, but most of them are active, and they are with my branch chiefs, like the kaicho, the various kaicho of the Dokukai and Keikojo. I have a very, very close connection. Like we have phone calls every 1 or 2 weeks. With Japan, I have an especially close connection because I cannot go to Japan right now because of the pandemic. Normally, I'm staying a couple of months each year in Japan and teach there. But right now, I'm stuck here in Germany because of the travel restrictions. So, yeah, that's a bit of a problem right now. But yeah, with them, I teach them via Skype. I watch their sessions through Skype or Zoom and give corrections to them. We talk about the strategies, the philosophies, and yeah, that's what we do basically each week. So through that, I keep a very close connection with them.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you and make sure we cover before we close is this the adoption, the name change, and all that. Like, what were you thinking in terms of that? How did you make that decision? What did your family and friends think about that when you're back in Germany? Like, can you talk about that whole thing?
Yeah, the adoption, it was something after I received the Menkyo-Kaiden. I was asked by my teacher if I wanted to become his son because he had no children on his own, and so he wanted to pass down the school within the family. And he asked me if I can become his adopted son. And he had also a very close connection to my parents, to my birth parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And through that, because he basically, when he visited Germany and when I moved back and forth between Japan, he always came for a couple of months to visit and to live with my parents. He lived for months with my parents sometimes. Oh, wow. And through that, we were basically one family. And yeah, and they had no problem with it. For my mother, it was a bit hard that I officially changed my name and lay down the name I was born under. It was, yeah. I'm a single child.
Only child.
Yeah. Only, yeah. I'm their only child. So yeah. When your supposed heir is laying down the family name and takes on a completely different name, becomes a completely different person, pursues a completely different path of life. It's not the easiest thing for a parent, most likely, but they accepted it. My father was very proud of me, and my mother in the end as well. Yeah, for my friends, it was hard in the beginning for the name change, to call me by a completely different name, but well, they managed. My parents still call me by my old name, of course, because they are my parents. They gave me that name. I'm not going to ask them, call me something different. That would be not nice. Mm-hmm. But only my parents call me by that name. And my cousins as well. That they are the only ones, like really the closest family circle still calls me by my old name, but the rest not.
Mm. So, like, even for you, like that decision, what was that? What went through your mind in terms of when this was brought up? Was it, oh well, this is obvious that's the next step in my journey, or did it come as a surprise? Did you think that okay, there's additional responsibility, there's additional things that you have to think about? How long?
Yeah, it was. Well, unusually, let's say like that, but it was unusual. But I read a lot about it, about the Japanese family system, how this whole adoption thing, becoming a Yoshi, works. And even many Pushi in the past, they changed their names a couple of times during their lifetime according to what they wanted to become, for example. So when Itosai, the founder of the Itto-ryu, in the beginning, he was just Yagoro, just an orphan, and who was from the village of Ito. And so he was Ito Yagoro. And his teacher, after Kanemaki Jisai, after mastering the Chujo-ryu, his teacher told him, well, you should take a more suitable name. And he took the name Ito Itosai Kagehisa. So, well, people change their names according to what suits their lifestyle best in the past. And adoption in Japan is completely normal. Also, changing your names, getting adopted into another family, it happens very often. So I thought, why not? It suits my lifestyle. I was doing it as a professional back then, so why not?
Then that's not too different than like a lot of even large family corporations that are quote family businesses aren't even in the same family. It's just like, oh, we're going to hire a new CEO, and if you want to be the leader of this company, you have to change your name, and it just happens. Yeah.
In the daimyo families, it was the same. There was a Tokugawa adopted into the Ikeda family or whatever family. They when there was no heir, they just adopted a suitable candidate. I think this is a very good system to keep the family basically alive and healthy, because the most suitable person is adopted. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a very, very good thing, because what is family in the end? I think family is a bond between people. And because, well, many think it has to be blood relations, but take, for example, you marrying someone. That person shouldn't be from your blood. Shouldn't be. So, but that person becomes family as well, doesn't it? So why not with a child? Why not with someone you adopt as your child? That person becomes family as well. And that person, I consider Sendai my father. He is my father, and I'm his son. I'm his heir. This is how it's done, and it doesn't feel strange at all. Mm-hmm. Now I just have two parents instead. So he's not married. So two fathers and one mother. It's, well, why not? It's not. It's nothing bad.
So we're almost at time. I want to get through a couple of the rapid fire questions before we close off this. So first one is, do you have a favorite quote or proverb?
You mean like a citation I go by, or?
Yes.
Okay. So it's Ken no tame no jinsei ume wa sakerarenai. It's my life for the sword, fate is inevitable. That's my basic life motto I go by. Because, well, my life for the sword is obvious, and ume wa sakerarenai is, for me, I think lots of the things which happened to me in my life were fated, because it's just too many coincidences.
Yeah.
So I believe in fate, and that's why this is my motto, basically.
That's great. So the next one is, what have you changed your mind over in the last few years? Something that maybe you've matured, maybe you've experienced something that made you think that, oh, this thing that I used to believe is something that maybe is not so true, or something that I used to believe was false, but is now, yeah, I understand it more.
Yeah, well, I think my general attitude changed a lot. I think in the past I was more about fighting. Now it's more about passing down the school, like really the responsibility. All I wanted to be is become a strong fighter. That was what was driving me. But then after becoming a Shihan of the school, it was before I became soke of the school, but it was the responsibility to keep the tradition alive, to keep it healthy and alive, not just alive, but really healthy. Bring more students to the school, help to spread it, have to preserve what was passed down to us. That is the major focus change, I would say. Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm, yeah. No, I could see that progression even as you were talking about your story, how like Yado and Kendo wasn't enough for you. You wanted some real kind of fighting, but now, yeah, just seeing how you're overseeing your school from afar and like knowing all the names of your students, it really shows that evolution of who you are. We don't have time for every other question. Is there one that you liked in the list that you remember that you wanted to answer?
Yeah, my favorite waza in Shiai.
Yes. Okay.
I have actually two. My absolute favorite is, of course, the Kiri Otoshi to use in Shiai. It's one of the most difficult techniques to use in Shiai, but it really represents Hokushin Itto-ryu or Itto-ryu in general, because you have to have very strong seme to force your opponent back, and you force him to attack basically, and then the feeling when you cut through his attack, it's just incredible. And not getting hit by that, even if he really goes to you directly, and just deplace the sword and cut him, that is you cannot really plan to do that. It has to become spontaneously. But when you become able to do so, it takes a lot of time to use kiritoshi freely in Shiai. So there's a saying in Itto-ryu, Itto-ryu wa kiritoshi de hajimaru to kiritoshi de uwaru. So Itto-ryu starts with kiritoshi and it ends with kiritoshi.
Huh.
So that's basically why it's my favorite. Because, well, in the end, you have to become able to use it freely. And the other one is the Sandanzuki. It's a technique where you thrust 3 times. You deplace the opponent's sword, the attack, thrust him once here in the shoulder. Then through that, you move over to this side, thrust here, and then immediately here. It is like a rapid fire. It goes like pum, pum, pum. It's super nice.
Yes.
Those are my 2 favorite Shiai techniques.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything. I thought it was really wonderful to have this exposure to what you've had to experience, and then also dispel some myths about, like, normally people, they search around or they look at a guy, oh, you're a Caucasian white guy from Germany who has a Japanese name, who's always dressed in Japanese stuff. It's like, is this for real or is he just cosplaying? But it's so clear that what you've experienced and through your story here, that this is serious, and like you were just born in the wrong place in some ways. Some cases you should have been born in Japan instead of in Germany. But I think it was, yeah.
I think that, the place I was born was just right. It was just everything went its natural way, and that's what I mean with fate. It's just everything is fine as it is. I don't want to be Japanese. I'm not Japanese. I don't look Japanese. I don't even look Asian. I'm the you know, it's I'm who I am. That's the thing, and I think nobody should be ashamed of who they are for whatever reason. If they are black, if they are white, if they are Asian, if they are from Greece, England, Ireland. I don't. It's just be proud of who you are. Live your life so that you can be proud of who you are and who you become. That's what I live after. That and what I want to achieve. That when I someday lie on my dying bed and can say, well, the life was worth living. That's what I want.
Well, that's a wonderful closing message. Is there, if anyone wants to, or hears this interview and wants to learn more about you or more about your school, where might they go?
To our website, most likely, www.hokushinitto-ryu.com.
All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I
Thank
really
you very
enjoyed
much
this
for the interview.
conversation.
It was a pleasure.